Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first CLC Connection for the fall semester. I hope that you all have fared well through Hurricane Nicholas. My name is Ashley Roseborough, AKA the CLC Lady, and I am the program manager for the ATA program and the moderator for today's event. We are excited to be joined by our honored guest, who I will introduce momentarily. But before we get started, I want to cover some housekeeping items for you today. This is an opportunity for you to engage and ask our guests many questions. To do so, please utilize the chat box for questions and we will ask and answer them live during the event. Additionally, the chat box can be used for commentary as well. We encourage both. This event is being recorded and will be made available to you at a later date to rewatch and share with your peers. Without further ado, let's get started. We are honored to have attorney Tatiauna Holland with us today. Houstonia's Magazine 2020 top immigration lawyer, Tatiauna Holland is a passionate and advocating attorney at law. Ms. Holland received her BA in International Affairs from the University of New Orleans and completed her JD from the HBCU Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. With her legal background in removal, deportation defense, and family-based immigration matters, Ms. Holland has a wealth of experience advocating for human rights with stops at Manuel Solis and Joan Bennett's law firm, where she served as supervising attorney and counsel respectively. In 2014, attorney Holland opened up her boutique law firm, Holland Law Firm PLLC in Houston, focusing on Board of Immigration Appeals, asylum, and visas for persons impacted by DACA, Violence Against Women Act, victims of violent crimes, and trafficking visas. A wanderlust at heart, she is active in her community, volunteering for Houston volunteer lawyers, and through her service as a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Welcome, Attorney Holland.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the introduction.
No problem, no problem. Before we get into today's interview, I do want to start off with two icebreaker questions. The first one is, what is your favorite word?
I thought that was a really funny question. For some reason, my favorite word is pomegranate. There's no rationale behind it. I don't know why. Yeah, that's just, I love that word.
Do you like pomegranates?
Yes, I do, but it's not like a fruit that I'm gonna go pick up tomorrow. I have no earthly idea, but I love the word, yes.
Okay. I like the way it's spelled. You know, it's spelled exactly how it sounds. So good choice. And my next question is, if you could have any other profession other than the one you are in now, what would it be and why?
I would have to say a talk show host. If I was not an attorney, I think I would want to be a talk show host because I am inquisitive just by nature and I like to meet people. So yeah, I think that TV hosts and reporters, interviewers, they're skillful at how they get to know people. So
okay, so would you be a late night talk show or would you be an Oprah, Ellen vibe? Where are we going?
I'm gonna have to go with the more Oprah vibe because I can't dance. I think I would like giving things away. I don't want to do the late night joke, so I think more Oprah.
Nice. And do you have a name for your show?
Oh goodness, this is intense. No, I'd have to stick a pin in that one. I don't know.
Well, in the future, when it happens, be sure to link us in, and if you would be so kind, include us somewhere in it. We appreciate it. So you have been awarded the 2020's top immigration lawyer. Do you mind sharing your educational background of who you are and what inspired you to journey into a career of being an immigration lawyer?
Oh goodness, so I've pretty much always wanted to be an attorney. Like as long as I can remember, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, even when I didn't quite understand it. You know, it's not necessarily like Law and Order. It's not a bunch of arguing every day, but I knew that I wanted to be in something that dealt with advocacy. I enjoy being able to stand up for people who don't necessarily or cannot necessarily stand up for themselves. So that's something that I've always wanted to do. And then just the path to get there was a bit of a winding road. So to go to law school, you can get a bachelor's degree in anything that you choose to get, to get it in. So that was kind of hard for me to decide what I wanted to initially get my bachelor's degree in. I started out my college career at Norfolk State University. in electrical engineering through a program called DNEMIS, which is amazing. It was an amazing full scholarship, all of that. About a year in, I learned that I wasn't nearly as passionate as any of my counterparts. They knew that they wanted to get a PhD. They knew they wanted to work for NASA. And I'm just struggling to get through the program. I hate going to class. I don't like anything about it. So I had to kind of figure out, what do I want to do long term? What can I be employed in if I just had only a bachelor's degree? And from there, and I stumbled across the University of New Orleans. I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana. Found enough full scholarship through their program, and I could study really whatever I want. And that's when I found out I had an affinity for, for international affairs, multiple languages, different cultures, and that kind of snowballed into eventually going into immigration.
So you are a transfer student.
Yes.
You also were in the STEM field, and then your heart pulled you towards advocating for others.
Right. Yes.
When did you know, at what point, that being a lawyer was what you wanted to do?
I feel like I knew that. No, you know what? I know exactly when it was. I was in one of my engineering classes and we were building this robot and everyone was so happy about it. Like they're just talking about it. And I remember wanting to throw my project against the wall. I didn't want to do it. I was like, this just isn't it. I want to be a lawyer. I know that it might be challenging. It's a long road to get there. And at the time when I graduated from undergrad, that was in 2010, the job market for lawyers wasn't looking all that great. So it was just something that I knew that I wanted to do. And when you have passion behind it, plus, a great tribe of mentors around you, it can all fall into place. So it did.
Thank you for sharing. It was an epiphany in the classroom.
It was an epiphany. I still think about that robot all the time. Yes. No.
You spoke a little bit about mentorship, and that's something that is essential to any college student, any career professional, having mentors and guides to assist you with, your development as a student and as a professional. How did you find your mentor?
In the beginning, well, when you're in college, a lot of times you have the professors, you have the counselors around you. So you have like your built-in mentors. You know who you want to speak with, who you want to talk with, or they'll kind of connect you with the proper people to help you along your journey. Once you graduate, it can get a little bit more challenging to find those mentors because you don't necessarily have the same structure in your life. So my biggest advice when looking for a mentor is you can have a peer mentor, like you can have someone who is at the same life stage as you are, but you can just say, hey, like, I admire what you've got going on. I see what you're doing. Can you help me get to these spaces? We a lot of times don't really share our weaknesses with our peers. We want everything's all good. You don't need help, but there's tons of people around you that are in the same, age range or stage in life that have a lot to offer. I also believe in like internet mentors, like, your fake mentors. Like Tony Robbins is my mentor in my mind. I can't get in touch with the man, but I will watch any podcast or anything that he puts out because he's where I want to be in life. And then, the traditional mentor, your in-person people, your older people that might be older in a different career stage than you, ask this person what you need from them. Hey, I'm looking for a mentor in these particular areas. If you have that time, if you have that bandwidth, can you please check in with me once a month, or we get coffee once a quarter or something to make sure that I'm actually progressing and on that path. So it's really important to ask that question and ask of that obligation and relationship with that mentor and don't fall off, because there's a lot of people who would like to be your mentor, could be a great mentor, but don't know that's what you need or don't even know what you would want to require from them.
Awesome. Well said, Attorney Holland. Thank you for that. Small shameless plug. You have peer mentors already in the ATA program. If you have not met them, please get acquainted with your peer mentor. Visit the ATA Lounge or the ATA office. They are in there. They are more than welcome to help you with your journey here and beyond. And I'm happy that you spoke to a mentor at every stage of where you are, whether that be in class, whether that be professional, and even online. Tony Robbins is a gem. I have one of his books, and And they also can facilitate in your journey indirectly as well as directly. So our next question is, what does a day in the office look like for you?
Oh goodness. So we are a team of four. So there's four of us here in the office. So we're still a very small, close-knit, family-oriented law firm. Now, on a day-to-day basis, sometimes I do feel like that meme of like the dog on the bike and it's on fire, and you're like, it's fine, everything's fine. I have to be able to pivot because we are still a smaller law firm. So there's a lot that goes into the day-to-day that a lot of clients don't see. So there's acquiring new clients. So then you have to, constantly be up to date on like what new laws and policies have changed. And in immigration, if you've been paying attention for the last 6 years, it's been a day-to-day. Everything is a little bit new. So that's part of it. And then there's still just the writing, briefing, court appearances. That's another aspect. And then we live in such a fast-paced digital world. Then there's the marketing on top of that. So shamelessly, I had to be taught to use TikTok. There were just so many things you have to learn to make sure that you're constantly evolving, attracting clients, remaining relevant, both personally and professionally, because we just live in a world where people expect to have a lot of access to you, and you have to just figure out how to make that possible to advance in your career. So it's a lot of moving parts throughout the day and a lot of flexibility. And I have an amazing team. I don't know where I'd be without them. So having an amazing team around makes the day-to-day go better.
Absolutely. You spoke to pivoting, which is something that, in the past year and a half, a lot of us have had to do and adapt. What has been one of the most rewarding things you've noticed in your ability to pivot with owning a smaller law firm? What has been the most rewarding thing you've noticed within yourself, within your team, and so on?
Oh, work-life balance. That would probably be the best thing that has come over, not necessarily the entire time that I've owned the practice, but definitely over the last 2 years, is understanding that we can be amazing advocates, but we still have to find time to work out, eat right, spend time with your family, unplug. And that is actually something that COVID taught me, is how to, okay, you only have this many hours in the day. How can you be most effective? How can you be most efficient? And take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself, because even if you're working for someone, you own the place, what have you, if you aren't at your best health, mentally, physically, you're not going to be any good to anyone. So that's probably been the biggest thing as far as pivoting, is understanding the need for some sort of work-life balance.
Awesome. Well, shout out to you for work-life balance. That is something we all, as 9-to-5ers or creatives or small business owners, can continue to develop and cultivate. What are some skills juniors and seniors in college can develop now as they are preparing for their career in law?
So when I first thought about this question, I initially was going to say your writing skills. So the ability to write well is terribly important in the profession, or to succinctly and concisely get your argument and your point across. That's super important. But they're also going to take those skills, hone them, and actually, change them just depending on your background. So I have more of a liberal arts background. I had to completely change my writing style from something that was very descriptive, maybe a bit flowery, to something that's more direct and to the point. But they'll teach you that in law school. You will learn that. The biggest skill really is your ability to network and sell yourself, even as a student. I felt like I didn't have a lot to offer when I was a law student, so I would typically avoid networking events, or if I was in networking events, I was more trying to figure out what I could get from this particular person that I'm networking and I'm connecting with. Like, I need a job. That's fine and dandy. Everybody needs a job. Why is this person talking to you? Why are you interesting? What do you have to offer? And even as a student, you have a lot to offer, whether it's you have certain hobbies or recreational skills, whether you have an interest in working in a nonprofit, whatever you are, whatever you bring to the table is super valuable. So I would recommend honing those networking skills, even as an undergraduate student, and just, figure out ways to be creative to sell and market yourself, so that when employment opportunities do come up, those people that you've built those relationships with think of you first. And then you can show those other skills when you're in the room, whether it's, interviewing or just having like even smaller, more intimate networking circles. So yeah, so that would be the biggest thing, networking and then your writing skills.
Awesome. Two things that we have resources on campus for students to access completely free. And you can even utilize those resources after you graduate as a UHD alumni. You spoke to, what makes, showcasing what makes you interesting, what sets you apart, what you can bring to the table. What are some tips that you have in helping students find that and speaking to it confidently?
I am a huge fan of the elevator pitch. I truly believe that if you cannot explain what you do in about two minutes, maybe even a little less, what are you doing each day? Are you really going to class? Like something just as simple, and never take for granted that someone just understands what you do for a living. Like just never. Like if I walked into a room and I said, oh, I'm an attorney, there's 15 other attorneys in that room, and we all 15 might not know what we do for a living or how to explain that. So definitely, however you learn best, figure out how to isolate your competencies and explain it in an elevator pitch. Like, okay, well, I went into law because I'm terribly efficient. I don't like things that take a very long time are just not, I can't take it. I don't understand how people can sit in meetings for 2-3 hours at a time. It could have been an email. So if I'm trying to sell myself to a law partner that's like, hey, we want our clients to be advocated for, but we don't really want to spend a whole bunch of money, then I come through and I say, okay, well, I've got great interpersonal skills. I can really talk to anyone. I can make people feel connected, but I'm also terribly efficient. My legal writing skills are better than most. I can typically complete things faster, and you make everything sound like a benefit to this particular person that you're connecting with. And you will have multiple elevator pitches. There are some pitches in the room where I'll walk in and all I'll talk about is immigration because that is my primary practice area. That is what people know about me. But if I'm at an event I might talking about immigration in an event for realtors. So another aspect of our practice is we do real estate law. So we do, mortgage foreclosure defense. We deal with HOAs. We deal with deed transfers. I know now how to pivot and discuss that other part of my practice in 2 minutes to make someone want to work with me or at least know more about me so that maybe we could connect later. And also be okay with the fact that your networking today might not pay off tomorrow. Somebody might get your card and they don't call you for 6 months or a year. Like I've had some people that say, hey, you gave me a pen 3 years ago and I held on to it for when I could finally, use your services. That still matters. So definitely practice your pitch. And then also with your trusted circle of not just your friends, please have some people who have a little bit more experience than you. Ask them to give feedback on your pitch and on your spiel, because people who are around you might say, hey, you forgot to mention that award that you got last year. You forgot to mention A, B, and C, or I got a little bored midway through your pitch. Can you fix this and that? And have your trusted circle that can kind of help you improve and become more confident. But if you try to do it alone with your own natural insecurities, with your own natural doubt, you're not going to come through confident. So all of that.
I chuckle a bit because as someone who has met you in smaller circles, terribly efficient is spot on with who you are, and cultivating the skill set to be efficient, to be organized, to be on top of your stuff. All the firing at all cylinders, it takes a great deal of effort and work and awareness of self. So I commend you on, honing in on that and being a master of that craft, because that is something that takes time for people to cultivate. And you mentioned the networking you do today may not pay off tomorrow. That piece of being okay with the delayed gratification is something that, is something that as we all are pursuing our passions, our dreams, it may not come, a month from now right after graduation. It may come 5 years from now, and you still have to keep your eye on the prize as it goes through its phases, because it will show up. It's just a matter of when, and are you prepared to receive it once it does come? So thank you so much for dropping that wealth of knowledge in that question. And as we move forward, describe 3 things that have been most important to you in choosing a career.
That's very interesting. So I'm gonna just have to be real. I think I chose this particular career field because I wanted to do something that was fulfilling to me. And I also understood that I could do this career as long as I wanted to. So I initially started practicing when I was 25. So I knew that realistically, if I wanted to work just only in this field, I could make it to retirement age. Once I started really working, because being a lawyer was my first real big girl job. I had little smaller jobs to make it through college, but I went directly from undergrad to law school. I quickly found out I didn't want to work that long. I was like, that's, working 40, 50 years. I was like, I realized I didn't want to do that either. So I quickly, kind of pivoted from working for other attorneys to figuring out that the only way to have some sort of financial freedom was to actually work for myself. So it came with a lot of risk initially, but I also understood that I would have more control over my long-term income, or a little bit more freedom to transition to do other ventures. So that was a really big motivator as far as why not only did I become an attorney, but I eventually left and went into private practice for myself. So the financial freedom, the ability to work, as long as I really wanted to, or as little as I wanted to, as far as the term of the career. And it is fulfilling to get paid in hugs sometimes. Like, when you do deportation defense and you do immigration, there's nothing like, someone thinking that they'll never see their family member again because that person would be barred from entering the country for 20 years or so, to overcoming all of that, and that person has their permanent residence and eventually their citizenship here. That part of the immigration part of my practice is the most fulfilling when it comes to knowing that you're making an impact and you get to meet these people and their families and see their kids grow up. That's a motivator as well.
Well, it's always nice to work for yourself. And did you have to how did you prepare yourself running your own business? Because that is a business as well.
So I'm one of those people who have like a million ideas at the same time going all the time. If you're ever around me, I typically keep a notebook on some flat surface everywhere that I am, so that I can write down ideas just all the time. Because if I don't, then they'll leave. So I feel like a lot of my ability to run a business was a bit just observation, just observing like, hey, this is how I'd like to be treated. I started in law school, actually worked for Apple, the Apple store, for 2 years. So I knew that I wanted a customer service journey very similar to that, very streamlined, very client focused. I wanted my clients to not only come and patronize the business, but I wanted them to be turned into promoters. I wanted them to say like, okay, this was my lawyer. I had a great experience with her. This is the person you should definitely work with. So I knew I wanted to create that type of customer service aspect. Managing my caseload was something that I wasn't prepared for, because as an associate, with another firm, with other firms, I didn't have to manage my own caseload. So I could, they would typically assign the cases that I had and I would work from there. But figuring out how much to charge and how many clients can I take in a month and what clients should I turn away, that was really just having those peer mentors around, and then having like some people who have been in business longer. So my mentor, Joan Bennett, she recently retired about 3 years ago. She practiced for about 40 years. So she worked, in government, but she also was in private practice for about 20 years. So she was very influential as far as telling me what I should spend money on, what I shouldn't spend money on, where to cut corners, where you can't cut corners. So she was actually in office with me for about 2 years, just kind of helping me out and, telling me, how do you treat your employees? How do you do payroll? All of that was her. And then my paralegal, Deanna Gallego, she's been with me off and on since I became an attorney, like all, even when I was working for other people. So she's been at different firms. So she was very helpful as far as this is how pricing should go. This is, we need to increase our prices or don't, or, how to kind of interact with clients. So having constantly evaluating how the business is run and just trusting your natural intuition has been very helpful.
It's good to have, it's nice to hear that you had a mentor who has had a wealth of, time in the field of law. 40 years is no small feat.
Yeah, and she's retired, but she still calls and like, well, what's going on with this case? I'm like, be retired. Be retired, be at home, so that's good.
So let's dive into your work as an immigration lawyer. What does that entail?
Okay, so I like to view immigration split into three parts. So you have your deportation defense. That's usually what most people think of. A person's in front of an immigration judge. They're making their case for why they should be allowed to stay in the United States. That's just one aspect of it. And then you have the family-based immigration, which I look at those as far as being, permanent residence through a spouse or a parent, a child. You have citizenship. It's not necessarily related to a family, but I kind of lump these in. You have temporary protected status, which is a special designation that the government gives people from certain countries after natural disasters, civil unrest. So like countries like Honduras, Syria, they have that right now, and it's very temporary. Then we have we have Violence Against Women Act, which is if you have an abusive U.S. citizen, spouse, or parent, you can apply for a visa through that. Human trafficking victims and victims of serious crime in the U.S. I kind of lump those all into the family-based immigration portion. Then you have employment immigration, which is typically those people who are coming over to the U.S. to work in some sort of specialized employment. Excuse me. We also have like religious visas for people who come over to work in a type of like clergy or religious organization. So the typical day, it's really not typical right now. All of the immigration agencies, so the immigration court, U.S. immigration services that handle like citizenship and permanent residence, they're all backed up. So, we keep cases on our docket for several years, unfortunately. So like the average permanent residence in Houston can take you about 2 years to get. My immigration court cases, you can be in the immigration court system for 10 years plus, waiting for everything to be resolved. So the day's not typical, but kind of in a nutshell, the client will call us and we will set up a consultation in which we discuss their background. So, how old are you? When did you come to the United States? Did you come with a visa? Do you have any type of criminal record? Have you entered the United States multiple times? So we go through these plethora of questions and we figure out what they're eligible for. Some people are eligible for one form of relief. Some people are eligible for multiples, and we just kind of figure out how to kind of piecemeal the approach together based on the laws and policies that are in place.
Thank you for the explanation. I do have 2 questions specifically related to international students and students who are identified as DACA. Can you go into your work with us advocating for those students and being that resource for them?
Okay, yeah, so I'll kind of lead, so for a lot of international students, they'll come over on what we call an F visa. So it's a visa that requires that you be a full-time student in the United States, and you have to fulfill certain requirements to be able to stay here. And what they expect is if you ever drop down to part-time or once you complete your degree program, then you either have to find another form of relief that allows you to stay in the United States. So you might marry a US citizen, or you might get employment through an employer that is willing to sponsor for you to stay here. But it is typically expected that if you don't fall into another visa category once your F visa status is expired or terminated, then you would be expected to leave the United States. DACA is consideration of deferred action for childhood arrivals. So that's a temporary program that allows for people who came here as a child and don't have any type of serious criminal record and they're either enrolled in school or they've graduated or actually joined the armed forces at some point, they're allowed to work here legally and work and stay in the United States legally. Sorry guys. But it is, I don't know how to use this thing, sorry. But it is not, hold on.
Thank you all for watching. If you all have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We have a couple questions rolling in from some of our lounge audience to the right of me. But yes, if you have any questions while Attorney Holland is done answering this one.
Yeah, there's one here below. Someone was asking if DACA students can apply for the TESFA or FAFSA.
So I have to look up the Texas. I actually don't handle any of, so typically we'd have to read through the financial aid. So typically DACA students do pay for most things out of pocket, unfortunately. We'd have to read through the language of the financial aid program because it will typically say whether the person has to be a permanent resident or like a citizen to receive certain government funds. So yeah, a lot of the dreamers just pay for their education out of pocket.
Okay, another question is, how long does it take to apply PERM?
Okay, so that is a PERM certificate. So that is actually done by an employer. So whatever an employer says, hey, we don't have enough US citizens and enough permanent residents to fulfill a particular position, what they'll do is they'll have to actually go through the Department of Labor to get a certificate from them to say, hey, we want to sponsor a foreign worker to be able to come work for our company. I typically just advise for, depending on the size of the company, I typically advise for the company to either have their perm already in place or where they already have like kind of a system for sponsoring workers from abroad versus a smaller company saying, hey, I'm going to just start and apply for this particular certification myself because of all of the steps that go to get this particular certification. So they have to, one, prove that they could pay something called a prevailing wage, which says that, hey, I can afford to pay this particular salary. And then they also have to prove that they've done a bunch of marketing efforts to hire permanent residents and US citizens. And it cannot be based on any type of language requirement per se. Like it can't say, oh, well, we need a person who speaks a particular language to fill this position. So the perm process itself is very short. The government actually issues those pretty quickly, but it takes the company themselves several weeks to months to do all of the steps to prove that they qualify for the labor certification.
Okay, the next question. The next question was the process to applying for law school lengthy/hard?
The process is definitely something to research. And I reached out to a lot of people at the time because I didn't know where to apply, what type of school to go to, because when you just don't know. So I remember thinking, I was like, okay, well, I want to go into international law. Like, how much should I spend on law school? Does it matter what law school you go to? So that was the first step. So I got a lot of advice from people around me. Mm-hmm. And then once you narrow it down to the particular law school, it is important to figure out what their particular admissions process is. So at the time, I have not researched or looking into law schools in a long time, but at the time, there was actually the Law School Admissions Council, which was this expensive portal, or expensive to me as a college student, portal that you had to apply for law school through. And then certain schools you could apply to directly and you didn't have to go through that. So you have to figure out what that particular school or schools require. And then lining up your letters of recommendation. So that's probably the most lengthy part, is making sure that you ask for letters of recommendation from staff and faculty that, one, know you and know your competencies. You don't want someone writing a recommendation letter that is pretty much copied and pasted and doesn't say anything special about you. And then two, lining up all those extracurricular activities that you did to prove that, that you'd be an asset to this particular school. And one tip of advice, I wouldn't rush it though. Like, don't, if you if you get like a wild hair and you're like, look, I want to apply to law school tomorrow, that's a bit soon. You want to make sure that you're taking the time to make sure that your application package is the best, is putting your best foot forward, and also take out that time to apply for any type of grants or scholarships, because they're not widely advertised, but you can look high and low to find some sort of financial assistance to offset the cost of law school, because it can get expensive. Even some of the, like tier 4 law schools can still add up after 3 years.
Okay,
Attorney-
someone was asking if there is a particular brand that you like to use for journaling, and also how would you manage and organize your thoughts and ideas in said journal?
Okay, so I have multiple ways that I write. So it depends on what I'm writing for, and I don't know how I develop this system. So if it's something personal, whether it's just journaling about my day or past things that I'm manifesting in my personal life, then I typically do have, actually have one right here, if anyone can see. So yeah, so I got like a little cute little journal here. It's small. I can throw it in my purse. That's kind of what I do. When I don't want to forget things, or it's just like something that I might have, it might be something that might be a little loftier goal, or something that I need to be reminded of more frequently to make sure that I kind of incorporate it into my life and my day. It would be these Post-it notes. And yes, they are all here handy, because I guess I always have them around me. But yeah, my Post-it notes, they go everywhere to kind of remind me where I want to be personally, professionally in the future. And then my business ideas are typically on like just a yellow notepad, and it's all over the place. Sometimes I have like an old school, outline, like I'm writing a paper. Sometimes it's just boxed off to where I can kind of categorize everything. There's no real method, but I just make sure that I, on a regular basis, reflect on it, make sure you read them. Have an accountability partner, have somebody that can really call you on it and say, hey, we had it set to where you were going to revamp the website. You said you were going to revamp the website by September 30th. I went on it today and you haven't done a single thing. Where are you? And so, yeah, so definitely reflect on what you write, and then have someone that's in the trenches with you to make sure that you're really accomplishing what you want.
Thank you, Attorney Holland, for these questions. Also to our audience today, thank you for the wonderful questions. Keep them coming, and we'll continue to answer them. For the legal counsel, Attorney Holland, you can just send that invoice to the ATA program. We'll take care of it for you through food. We'll pay you through food and lunch.
That works. I don't know if I finished the DACA part. I know we talked a little bit about it. But yeah, the DACA program, unfortunately, right now is not accepting any new applications. But if someone has DACA and would like to renew, we can still do those. If you've had DACA in the past and for some reason you let it lapse, which that happens for a lot of people, they'll have it and then maybe they start working, they don't, or the filing fee every 2 years is $495. They might not have that money, so they let it lapse at some point in the past. Those people are eligible to renew it as well. It's going to be a little lengthier process, but they're still eligible too.
Awesome. As you spoke on earlier, your pivot during the pandemic was navigating work-life balance. What are some tips, what are some gems that have been helpful to you in navigating work-life balance?
I've actually, so fun fact, I really liked school. Like school, it was just time. Like, it was hard when school was over. I was like, dang, there's no more school to go to. So I was probably my most productive while a student. So I did bring some of those, or I've started implementing some of those things back into my life. So I pretty much create an itinerary the night before every day. So I'll create an itinerary of like, okay, well, I plan on working out from this time to this time. You have this much flex time. You have 2 hours to work on this project. And it doesn't matter if I'm finished or not, I have 2 hours to get that done. And so by writing everything down, it has allowed me to see whether I'm overestimating myself, or whether, am I trying to really squeeze too many things in? Like Tony Robbins says something along the lines, people overestimate what they can do in 6 months, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So I will look and see, is my day too packed? Have I committed myself to too many things? And then I kind of adjust from there. And I found power in no. Like no is a complete sentence. I have found power in that. That's not my natural default. My natural default is to say, oh yeah, I can make it. I can try to figure it out. I can move some things around. And that's not, that's not sustainable long term. You can get away with it for a couple of years, what have you, but that's definitely how I've learned to maintain that work-life balance.
Awesome. Making lots of notes, the itinerary before, the end of the day, planning your next day. I'm sure that helps you sleep better as well, instead of laying in bed ruminating on all the
Right,
things
I know what
you have
everything
to do.
is, I know that it's done, yeah. Or I know what's not done, kind of to go from there.
Awesome. So I do want to circle back to the law school. We have a question from the audience that's asking about the LSAT. Can you speak a little bit about how you prepared for the LSAT? Any tips that you have?
So the LSAT has actually changed since I took it. I know they've taken away certain portions and added different portions. Back when I took it, it was essentially, they had a logic section. I remember that, like a reading comprehension section. I actually did a lot of self-study. So I remember buying a book and I just more so kind of read the book and got a feel for the type of questions that they were going to ask. I do remember that it was very close to some of the exit exams that we had at the University of New Orleans. So it was kind of in the same wheelhouse. But the first thing that I would do if you're considering taking the LSAT is evaluating the type of test taker that you are. And you look for those study materials that kind of fit your learning style. So for me, I'm more of a repetitive learning person. So if I see it repetitively, then I'll typically absorb it and we can go from there. There's certain people who have to understand every single thing that is on that sheet of paper before they can study well. So you'd have to figure out what works for you. So I did not do, most people ask, did I do a prep course? I did not do a prep course because I'm not a big fan of review sessions. Like I don't like group review sessions. I don't know if I should necessarily say this in this type of forum, but I really don't like to compare my understanding with other people's understanding or learn things that I've already mastered. So I'm a little bit of a smaller study group type of person. So I did the book on my own. I scored really well the first time I took it, but then I was like, oh, let's take it again. No, so I wouldn't advise taking it again, but that was just me. But you also want to double check the school's requirements. I remember at the time, some schools will take your highest score, some schools will average your score. So it just totally depends on what, your top three or schools that you have. But yeah.
Thank you for your honesty and transparency. That was a wonderful question. And again, if you all have any more questions, please keep them coming. We will ask them out loud during the session. And as I have a few more questions from our question bank, I did want to touch on overcoming challenges. In your experience, what are some challenges you have witnessed or experienced yourself in your career field, and how did you overcome them?
The biggest thing I think as far as a challenge or that I put on myself would definitely be the confidence factor. I remember when I first graduated, I graduated law school. I didn't look like an adult yet. So that was also a bit challenging because you're going into this field with people who've been practicing for several years. So a lot of times I would go into interviews and they would ask about, hey, tell me about yourself. And I'm like, hi, my name is Tatiauna. And yeah, no, you can't show up to spaces like who wants to hire you? Like who wants you to advocate for them if you can't advocate for yourself? So I definitely had to learn confidence. If I'm in a space, I belong in that space. I belong in that space because of my uniqueness. I belong in that space because of my skills, and I belong in that space even if I haven't developed those skills yet. So that was a big thing for me, is understanding that I needed a certain level of confidence to succeed in my career. And that came with me showing up with my authentic self to interviews, to court appearances, to just anywhere. I started once I started being myself when I showed up. So that included me wearing my natural hair, like as a Black woman, wearing my natural hair. Like I was like, I didn't feel comfortable, showing up in certain spaces because I'm working 80 hours a week. I don't necessarily have time to do certain things. So once I started dressing the way I wanted, doing my hair the way I wanted, even speaking to my clients in a more authentic way, instead of being like in a stuffy attorney type, because that's how you should be. I noticed that people trusted me more, they liked me more, and my career started to excel. So that was a huge thing that I was getting my own way by not showing up as my authentic self. But I mean, there are other external challenges, and you're just gonna have to roll with the punches. Like sometimes I remember one of the biggest challenges was just getting someone to view my resume. So, you send in a resume, you send in a CV, and before you get the confirmation email, you get the "I regret to inform you" email. So the biggest thing that I would say is, regardless of whatever field you want to go in, if you know that's what you want to do, you stick with that single mind and don't allow yourself to be discouraged by the no's. You can just figure out how to pivot, how to restructure your strategy, but don't ever let it just pull you down, because everyone's getting that "I regret to inform you" letter. We never post that on Instagram. We never post it, but we get them. We all get them. So that would be the two challenges.
As someone who is a Black woman and is young, deconstructing the imposter syndrome in your field is something that, we all have to, in some form, navigate and tell ourselves that we are worthy of these spaces. So for you to share that and be transparent and talk about the different ways of, how I dress is a part of deconstructing the imposter syndrome, how I explain and connect with my clients is deconstructing it. That is essential to your well-being as a professional. So thank you so much for touching on that and building that confidence in yourself and your dream. And you are worthy of being in these spaces. If you spent all this time working to get it, once you get there, you are worthy of having it. So remembering that and taking that with you, Attorney Holland, I appreciate you touching on that. And we do have a few more questions. We actually have a lot of time left. So as I do see some coming from the audience, we will get there as well. Ayala, Adriel, hey, awesome questions. Continuing on the theme of challenge, what do you believe is a big factor or circumstance that also allows you to win big cases? Are there any rituals, exercises, or superstitions that you do before going for the jugular?
Oh goodness. I like that. That's probably like the best question I've ever had. So typically, from the time I meet with a client the very first time, I typically have a strategy for how the case is going to go. Now granted, things kind of can kind of get in the way, but I typically have a strategy from day one as far as how I want this thing to go. But as we talked about, typically I'll have a case for a year, 2 years or more, and a lot of things can happen in that amount of time. The client will show one face when you meet them sometimes, and then after you've been with them for a couple weeks, a couple months, you start to see really how they possibly got this legal issue or not. So managing the client's expectations, managing their personality is very important. And then you also have like your opposing counsel. So you also, the one thing, Jerry Spence, he's a really famous trial lawyer. Jerry Spence, according to Jerry Spence, I didn't research this myself, but lawyers actually came from gladiators, as far as like when we were in an uncivilized society or a less than civilized society, kings and queens would settle their disputes using gladiators, and then over time, they became attorneys. So a lot of times I do spend time researching or understanding my opposing counsel based on how they've interacted with me, not really their bio. I'm not gonna research your bio, I don't care about that. But how you've treated me, how diligent you are with your deadlines, how your writing and your brief looks. And I try to kind of determine what type of person they are and what I can get away with at the trial stage. So, I mean, it's a lot of, paying attention to your opponent, just without the fighting part. Any rituals? Probably just not sleeping. That's probably the ritual. Like the night before a case, I still have not, before a big case, I really haven't managed the whole sleeping soundly the night before. So yes, it's all about preparation. So I typically need to know where everything is, make sure I didn't forget any exhibits, knowing exactly where the court is, like just all of that. I just need to know. So I don't have any real rituals or things that have to be done, but I just need to know that everything's organized because I don't like to look for things. And I think I'm easygoing, but the more I hear myself talk, I'm probably not. And my and my team typically knows like how I like things highlighted, divided, everything, so that when I'm there, it's just smooth. And I really don't even have to look down a lot of times because we prepared for this, you know. So yeah.
Absolutely. You sound like it's like studying your opponent before a game, studying the offense and defense and a little bit of chess almost. It's a lot
Maybe
of
I've
going
never
on.
been good at sports, so this is the one thing I'm good at.
Thank you for answering that. And for those in the audience, we do have some students in the lounge with us today. So moving forward, if we happen to be virtual, please come into the lounge, sit with us, watch the event on our TV screen so that you can engage with us, even if we are not able to host the whole event in person. That's where Adriel came from. It did not register to me that Adriel was throwing these questions and he's right across from me. So that's always refreshing and nice. And I miss you all. Moving forward, as a Black woman, as a successful Black attorney, would you say you represent, who would you say you represent in the work that you do?
Ooh, can you clarify that just a little bit?
Yes, so this is one of the questions from the audience. Would you say you represent mostly the Hispanic community, the Afro-Latina community, or the African-American community, or all of those who, or straight from the motherland?
Okay. So actually the primary part of my immigration client base is actually from Cambodia. I inherited a lot of my immigration, I guess, network or whatever from my mentor, who I have no idea how she acquired this particular network, but that is a large chunk of my particular client base. And over the last three years, as far as my immigration side, it has been growing to be more diverse as far as a little bit of everybody. Yeah, so like some people, I do have some people from Africa, some people, of course, from Mexico and Central America. But I've even gotten people from the UK as of recently. I'm like, where'd you get my number from? So, so that's super cool. So I've actually been able to help, pretty much been able to help everyone from all the continents except Antarctica. But yeah. And one of the most fulfilling and gratifying parts of the practice would be our real estate side, though. Now, our real estate side is pretty much primarily helping, Black African Americans with their particular property issues. So gentrification being a huge issue in the city of Houston now. It's been very important to really be able to help Black families maintain that generational wealth by making sure that the property is properly transferred to their descendants or to a person that they want to. We also discuss, trying to minimize certain tax liabilities if you are transferring property. And also on that side, I try to do a little bit more education, because sometimes people will come to me, either they don't have a legal issue yet, or they've probably done something to where there is no remedy, or the remedy that they want legally because too much time has passed. So I try to spend a lot of time to explain things like what happens when you don't pay your homeowners association dues. Texas actually is one of the few states that if you don't pay your HOA dues, the HOA can foreclose on your property. So, do you want to lose your property over $400? Do you want to do that? Hey, what happens when you're living in grandmother's house and, grandma gave you all a paid off house, but you decide not to pay the taxes? What happens then? That has been a new venture that has been very fulfilling for me as far as educating, Black people and people of color about how to maintain their homes and maintain their property. Has been great.
Wow. Leave it to Texas to foreclose if you don't pay.
I had an elderly couple lose their home over $150 a couple years ago. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
And at some point, we'll have to have a follow-up conversation about real estate litigation. Is that correct? Okay, looking at the law terms. Okay. We do have a few questions from the audience online. Treasurer wanted to know funding your law school program. Was it all out of pocket? Are there grant and scholarships you can apply for? Can you touch on that a little bit for us?
So because I was a transfer student, I actually had some grant money left over from the state of Louisiana. So at the time, they had this thing called the TOPS program that allowed, I think it's been modified a bit, but it allowed for graduates of Louisiana high schools with a certain grade point average to just go to school for free. So I didn't use all of the money because I started at a Virginia school. So they sent me a letter one day. I was like, if you have this much money left over, if you want to use it for a master's program, you can. So I called them. I called the state of Louisiana and said, hey, I don't want to go to get my master's, but I want to go to law school. Can you use it for that? She said, sure, why not? And so the first year of my law school was paid for using that grant. And then by that point, I started interning. And so I ended up working for a circuit court judge who had a lot of connections and, said, hey, write this paper to get a little bit of money, this particular thing. And that was more of a networking thing as far as like knowing what papers to write, knowing what scholarships to apply for to get that money. But it was a lot of piecemealing together for me. I have seen some people go to straight full scholarships from certain universities. I did have to piecemeal it between grants and some paying out of pocket.
Did not know about the Louisiana opportunity. Do you remember that resource so we can drop it in the chat for students to look up if they are Louisiana?
It's called the TOP Scholarship. It's like the Taylor Opportunity Something Scholarship. And back when I graduated a long time ago from high school, it was a little bit more, they offered more funding. I do remember that, but definitely something to look into, but it's graduates from Louisiana high schools.
Louisiana. Awesome. So if you did graduate from a Louisiana high school, please look into that. Free money is the best money, especially when it's going towards your education. We have a question from Wakita. Since you have such a diverse client base, do you speak any additional languages? And if not, which languages would you like to learn?
So I speak a little Spanish. Like I like to have fun with it, but I do not really do a lot of my client meetings in another language. I typically will have a translator there with me, but I'm just really starting to get to where my language barrier is becoming more important. So I actually spent 6 weeks in Mexico practicing this past summer, and then actually my eyes were burning on the plane because I'm actually reading a book in Spanish. So I try to like be a little obsessive with the amount of Spanish that I'm absorbing right now, because it is starting to affect my ability to connect with people, because we connect through spoken language the best between two people. But for the first 5 years of my practice, I really didn't have to speak a foreign language because a lot of my Cambodian clients either spoke English already or they would bring their own Khmer translator. That's their language. But I also think that cultural sensitivity or cultural appreciation is super important and has helped with my success. So the way that like my conference room is decorated, so there's a lot of custom art from Cambodia on the walls there. I know how to like interact with certain monks, like they can't touch women. So I make sure that I don't, when the monk clients come in, I don't touch them. My staff knows that. I try to book their client meetings at certain hours that are respectful to their religion and their eating habits. But yeah, so I think that learning a language is super important, but also understanding the different cultures of your particular client, and also knowing the differences between countries that people typically will kind of clump together. So like, let's say if a person's from Central America, they might assume that that person from El Salvador might speak the same type of Spanish or have the same cultural patterns as someone from Mexico. That's absolutely silly. You can't do that. Like, you have to know the difference between the different communities that you're dealing with. And I think people appreciate that even when you don't speak a particular language fluently. But I'm definitely really obsessive with learning Spanish. And then after that, I don't know what language I want to go to next. It's probably going to just make more sense to try to learn Khmer or Cambodian, because that's my client base. But that's going to be definitely a challenge. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing the name of the book that you're reading right now?
La Casa on Mango Street. It's The House on Mango Street. It's
it's a classic.
It's a classic. So I was like, if I've already read it in English, so I could also fill in some of the things that I remember happened. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Awesome, awesome. And have you ever visited Cambodia?
No, I want to. COVID right now it's not possible, but I definitely want to do the Cambodia, Thailand trip to just see it because it looks beautiful, and also the food. If you've ever had Cambodian cuisine, it's probably the best food you'll ever have. It's amazing. So definitely the food.
So we are in the middle of the pandemic, still going on a year and a half, a little bit over now. How has COVID impacted your job or your field?
Luckily, I was already pretty set up to work remotely anyway. So we already had the option for Zoom meetings. We already have the option to, schedule yourself remotely and all of that. And we also have a really great client management system that would allows our clients to upload documents through a portal. We update them through the portal. So we already had a lot of things in place. It was more so educating the clients that we never really made buy-in to our ecosystem is how the firm worked. So we had to do a lot more, updating the social media, a lot more calls and text messages, reminding our clients like, hey, you can't just drop in, it's not safe. You can't just drop in. And also to let them know about any closures and delays. So when COVID hit, the consulates internationally a lot of times stopped doing visa interviews or stopped issuing visas. We also had to let them know of different court closures and all of that, because it was really in the beginning, no one knew what was going on or how long it was going to last. So I think having those remote working capabilities set up, making sure the client base understands how to use them, and just frequent communication about the changes. And everyone's been great though. I feel like everyone's been really patient as far as understanding it's a pandemic, safety comes first. And
What are you looking forward to most once the pandemic clears up? Once we get over this large hurdle?
I'm actually really looking forward to in-person events. Before the pandemic, I really didn't enjoy networking in person. I wanted to, but now I miss my clients. I miss being able to be around people. So I'm really looking forward to hosting more in-person events once the pandemic is over.
Awesome. And your work as an immigration lawyer, as a lawyer in general, can sometimes be heavy. And how do you decompress or take care of your mental health?
I have a therapist that probably sees too much of me. So yes, I definitely believe in therapy. I believe in finding a therapist that works for you. And I'm like that with any and everyone. Like all of my friends are like, look, everyone needs a therapist. If you find that you're reaching a plateau with your therapist, find another one. That's big. I've just started recently incorporating working out as part of like just daily. Like I don't care what's going on, what's happening. I got to get a workout in. I could even be a little late for work sometimes because I have to make that a part of, just who I am. I'll work late. I'll do what I have to do, but that has to be part of it. But I've always been big on, or at least for the last, 5 years or so, yoga and meditation has always been big. I have to take time to meditate daily to kind of silence my brain to let me know like, hey, you've done all that you can do. You've done your best, and now it's time to rest, have fun, appreciate things and all that. So that's very important. So I keep the book, The Four Agreements, like on my coffee table at all times, because I think it's a good way to ground yourself and to remember you're doing the best that you can. So yeah, to keep the mental health together.
Come on, Gems. Four Agreements is something that I encourage everybody to read at least once a year, at the beginning of the year, maybe in the middle of the year. But the Four Agreements is an awesome book. And to our students, if you mentioned therapy and meditation and breathing, to students here at UHD, you get those services absolutely free to you in our counseling services. You get 5 free sessions for every topic. So time management is 5 sessions. Family life is 5 sessions. Meditation is 5 sessions. Every topic that comes with being a student, those those services are provided to you absolutely free. It is a privilege to be able to have therapy and able to afford it, because it does get pricey, unfortunately. And that is something, if you can't afford it and you have it, use it.
And also, they should probably hire me, because I will tell, I probably talk about this once a week. Legacy Health in Montrose has amazing behavioral health services that are on a sliding scale. So you can actually get, any type of psychiatry, or, just regular counseling for like free to $20 to whatever a session. So definitely something to check out, Legacy Health, for not just behavioral health, but all of your needs. I know you guys are in school now, so you probably have some sort of built-in insurance, but they're amazing. And if we're throwing out books, the Mamba Mentality is also great. Kobe Bryant's book, that is also a coffee table book that I read. It's a book if you want to figure out how to just keep yourself going and make sure that you're the best in whatever you choose your path to be. Kobe talks about how he chose the best person that wraps his hands and wrapped his knees. Like, he wanted someone that was a perfectionist doing that thing. So regardless of what you choose to do, you can be a Kobe in your field if you really put that work towards it.
Yes. And we have a question about books. So as you have more, please continue to drop them in during the session. And Michelle and I, we will work on getting the links to you all so that you can either look them up, purchase them either through Amazon, or rent them in our UHD library if they are available. As we have about 30 more minutes left. If the audience, I do see a couple of questions, so I'm going to pivot to those. Wakita asked, at what point in your law career did you know you wanted to practice immigration law and offer the additional services at your firm? What would be the biggest differences in the transactional path versus litigation?
Ooh, okay, so at one point in my law school career did I decide? I knew in law school, I actually went to law school because I wanted to practice international law. So I really thought that I would want to go work at The Hague or something like that. Throughout my career, I learned that was actually not a field that a lot of lawyers can go into, because it's such a niche market. The International Criminal Court isn't operating frequently. So what else could I do? And so that immigration kind of seemed like the next logical field. So my first job in law was actually at a personal injury law firm. That was the one type of law that I said I did not want to do. I was like, I will, but I had to go to work. I had to get a job. So I got an interview while working at the personal injury firm. I got an interview at this immigration law firm, and they were like, when can you start? I said, today. Just joking. He said, well, here's your desk, here's your client. And I started right after my interview, and we went to court the next day. And that's just how it was. And from that day, I enjoyed it very much. Like, I just really loved how, yeah, it's work, but it doesn't feel like work. Now, when it comes to transactional versus litigation, when I was in law school, I did not think I wanted to ever litigate. I don't know if I just viewed myself in a weird way. I was really tiny. I just didn't feel like, hey, could really be in a courtroom like that. And then I worked for a judge as a clerk, in which all you do really is research, you write, and you pass everything off to the judge. And I knew that just was not for me. I learned then I was the type of person that, I guess I also saw a lot of lawyers litigating. I'm like, they're actually not that intimidating and not that great. I can do this. And so that is how I wanted to go into litigation. But I do a lot of transactional work as well, because litigation is a lot of deadlines, a lot of work. You need a lot of support. So you can't take, or at least I can't, take as many litigation cases per year as I can take transactional cases. With my transactional cases, that's like my permanent residence cases, citizenship, DACA, anything that I just have to more so deed transfers, stuff like that. Anything that I essentially just kind of identify the problem, the solution, and then can fill it out and maybe mail it in. And there's really nothing that I have to show up for. I might have to do a tiny interview, or I might have to write a response. I can do a lot of that throughout the year. And I can also request help from, like from my team, from my staff. So I do a little bit of both. I think that the transactional part of the process or the part of the career actually funds the firm and keeps the firm open. Litigation is very expensive, it's very taxing, and those are the bigger cases, but we only kind of get that money a few times a year. So as far as being a boutique firm, we actually do both. We have to do both.
Awesome. That was a lot of legal jargon.
Yes.
My head completely, but that's fine. From what I've garnered, transactional path, more frequent, brings in the money.
A lot of paper. I got to print a lot of paper.
Litigation, not as frequent, but they are the larger.
Those are my larger cases. I have to go to court. There's a lot of deadlines, a lot of motions to file. You have to be on because you miss a deadline and the case goes down the drain. So those are a lot.
So with practicing law, what has been your most rewarding case, accomplishment, something that, you know, as you have these moments like, this was what I was meant for. Can you share a little bit of that, some of that with us?
So my asylum cases are probably, this is why I get out of bed in the morning. So you can apply, so a person applies for asylum when they say that I am afraid to return to my home country because I've been persecuted in the past or have fear of future persecution. And you can only apply for asylum at a border point or once you've entered the United States. You can't mail an asylum application from your home country and say, oh yeah, US, let me in. So a lot of the rhetoric behind people who come to the US or are traveling through Mexico to come to the US for asylum, it really aggravates me because the way US immigration law is set up, they have to be here. So that's frustrating. So, and then persecution isn't just someone was treating me badly in my home country. My husband was mean to me, or I don't like it here. No, these are people who are really facing, life or death by staying there. And it has to be because of your race, your religion, your national origin, or something called a particular social group. A particular social group is actually pretty difficult to define, and there's not a lot of people who fit in those. But essentially, there has to be something about you that makes the persecutor point you out amongst everyone else in the population. But there must be other people like you in the population. So like kind of think about it like a marginalized group, and that's how you apply for asylum. So probably my favorite asylum case that I did so far was these two brothers that they came from El Salvador together. Really nice guys. When I first met them, my paralegal was like, this case is great. Like, you have to talk to them. So I talked to them and I asked them about why they're afraid to go home. And they're like, oh, the gangs, but nothing else. It's like, she told me this was a good case. Like, that's not a really strong case. We have gangs in the US, like what's going on? I'm gonna find out one of the brothers had actually gotten kidnapped by the gangs that was actually involved with the police. He was taken to a house, like with a kill room. They actually pulled the trigger on him, but the gun jammed. The corrupt police officer comes, gets him out, all that jazz. And he actually testifies against the people who kidnapped him, but their court system was so different than ours. He was actually handcuffed to his kidnapper during the hearing. The kidnapper got released. I mean, he got convicted, but he got released like the next day. So he had to escape the country and all of that. It was and it was just insane. The paper there had published his name, had published his address, where his mom worked, all that for the gangs to kidnap him, or to do whatever they wanted to do the next time. So it was really rewarding to win this case because most of the time judges deny cases based on any type of gang or criminal activity. But we were actually able to find like a small loophole in the law that allowed for asylum for prosecutorial witnesses that are still under threat. And actually when the media has somewhat gotten involved. And so we actually found that case the night before to kind of bolster it. Like I don't sleep the night before. So that was a really rewarding case. That was one of my favorites that we had.
Wow. That case came in clutch, like, mama mentality, for real. That is, wow. I am at loss for words. Do you, with, America leaving Afghanistan, do you think that you will venture into advocating for those seeking asylum who, American allies who happen to be Afghans?
No, definitely. Like if I get those clients they call, definitely, it's tough. It's going to be a tough couple of months, for the relocation. So there's the people who are actually that have evacuated out of Afghanistan. We are going to have multiple paths that they can qualify for. It just kind of depends. Some of them are going to go into the refugee resettlement system. Some of them are actually eligible for what we call a special immigrant visa. And then some of them will have to apply for asylum. We're expecting most of them to actually settle in Northern Virginia, based on just historically where a lot of people, once they leave Afghanistan, they go there. But immigration attorneys, our firm, we actually help clients anywhere in the US. So we practice in any immigration court. So yeah, it doesn't matter. So if somebody needs me in Virginia, I'm in Virginia.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it's a great way to travel as well.
Yes, I try to make sure that I incorporate it all.
So I have about 3 more questions for you. And I think this is one of our last ones from the audience. They want to know, how do you apply critical race theory to your cases?
Ooh, okay. So the thing has to be, when it comes to the law, unfortunately, it depends on like what your particular issue is, right? But a lot of times it is very difficult to lead with race first. So we typically have to find another basis for why this particular person deserves relief, or why someone must be enjoined or stopped from engaging in certain activities. So I'm part of a legal team that actually sued the city of Dallas over the use of rubber bullets during the George Floyd protests. And so we weren't able to say, oh yeah, police department, stop using rubber bullets towards Black people. We understand that is, that's an issue, but that can't be our argument. We would lose, So what we were able to do was to say, hey, you can't use these rubber bullets or what they call less than lethal projectiles as a method of crowd control. You can't do that. Like police officers, you have to actually do your job. So yes, we knew that they were actually being more aggressive and actually trying to hurt some protesters intentionally because of the basis of the protest, because they're protesting police brutality, racism, all of that. But you have to find an alternative argument typically to get the end result that you want. So so you definitely, it's kind of the code switching, but in a legal aspect. I know what you're doing. I know why you're doing it, but let me provide this alternative reason, because it's usually easier, or that's probably the only legal route to go about doing that. So yeah, we actually were the first legal team to actually get an injunction against a city enjoining them or stopping them from using rubber bullets during protests. And so that litigation is still ongoing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was really fun. Mm-hmm.
You are doing the things. Come on, like that is, we hear about, trying to, a lot of times this does go to court and it doesn't always work out in our favor, but to see that and to see that, that is still a way of causing harm to others, and you can't do that to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
It's a violation of our rights. So to see that play out.
And also keep in mind, like, we're in Houston, which is a super diverse city. Like, we have so many people of color in all professions. But keep in mind that the legal profession, like Black lawyers make up, I know Black female lawyers, we only make up 2% of the entire profession. So I want to say Black lawyers make up like 3%. It's not a lot. So it's just keep that in mind. A lot of times when you see settlements or you see the way the cases go, we have to be creative, because the way that existing laws and also the judges that we sit in front of a lot of times don't necessarily see us in themselves. So it's a long road. We have got a long way to go across the board as far as our legislation and the way our judiciary looks.
Thank you. We have the questions are still rolling, and I promise you, Attorney Holland, we're gonna have to get you to come in person, because the question
I was ready to come in person today, but I know the weather just, didn't allow it.
Next time, because we'll for sure have you back in some capacity. But you mentioned in the case that you do have to travel outside of the state to practice, will you also have to, pass the bar in that specific state, or is there a loophole to represent clients who settle in different states?
Okay, so immigration law is federal law. So whenever I practice in federal court, I'm actually allowed to practice anywhere in the United States because I'm not dealing with state-specific issues. I do not, yes, I'm only barred in the state of Texas as far as state law is concerned. I prefer to practice in federal court because I'm not taking another bar exam, y'all. I'm not doing it again. So I like the fact that I could just easily travel, from state to state practicing, but also throughout the years, I've actually been able to sort of specialize because these are the type of cases that I take. So I know what I'm doing. So that in that case. So when it comes to immigration cases in different states, the only time the law can be somewhat different is if there is what we call a circuit split. So in some circuits, they might have a little bit of a different ruling than here. Texas is actually in the Fifth Circuit. We are arguably the most conservative circuit. So I feel like if you can win here, you can win anywhere. So I'm not really intimidated when I have to leave the state of Texas.
Talk your stuff. I'm not really intimidated. If I can do it here, anywhere, I believe that firmly. What are can you share some professional organizations students can get involved with now? Any that you're a part of?
So yes, I will always shamelessly plug Houston Lawyers Association. They do have a membership available for law students. That's always great. Let's see. I'm trying to think of like non-lawyer associations that you can join because I really love and passionate about Association of Women Attorneys. They do have a law student track. I do not know if they have like a college student, so I'd have to double check that. They are my favorite. Well, especially before COVID, they had a lot of great in-person intimate networking events. So like one day we went golfing, or there might be like a happy hour, but there's only about 10 to 15, maybe 20 people there. And I've noticed that everyone's really interested in what you do, how to help and how to connect you with proper people. Yeah, but and also I found it really helpful to be part of volunteer organizations, like not necessarily like, nothing against it or anything, not necessarily like Habitat for Humanity or things that large groups do, but if you could find really cool things to do with 10 to 15 people, because those can become your core network and you don't get lost and people can kind of remember you and reference you. But yeah.
Thank you. We dropped some of those titles in the chat, so feel free to copy and paste it to Google so that the links can pull up, and then at a later time we will compile all these resources for you so that we can add them to our CLC library coming very soon. As we are in our last, what's up?
Another question.
When it comes to organizations that you want to join for your career, don't separate your personal self from your career. So if there are things that you like to do, you could definitely find a professional organization that kind of caters to that if that's what you're into. Like there's a really cool Caribbean American Bar Association that has events that I am not of any Caribbean descent, but I like going to their networking events. They're always at really fun places. I can get clients there, but it's just a really warm group. So think of who you are organically and find organizations that fit that and have those events that you'll feel most comfortable in versus going to something that people just recommend that you join, but you don't feel comfortable in those spaces. So definitely kind of mix it all in.
Very, very good. Very good advice. Sometimes we don't think about ourselves as a person for what we can get involved with. So it's a great piece of advice. Adriel wants to know, how do you stay on top of everything? Are you a coffee drinker, a tea drinker, yerba mate? Do you love caffeine? Are you a caffeine person in general?
I'm ashamed to say it, but yes, I need my coffee. Well, it's weird. I'm a very weird, so I'm a super morning person. So I'm typically up before most people are up, and that allows me to be more productive. So I typically wake up around 4:30 every morning. And I will usually start doing I will usually start doing a little bit of work. And that's because I can get stuff done before the phone start ringing. The phone start ringing, people have just one question, all that jazz. But I'm definitely a coffee person. I'm trying to break the habit. I try to stay under 24 ounces a day, but yeah, I'm definitely a coffee person.
Thank you. And any advice on gaining law school experience prior, law experience prior to law school? Are you open for shadowing, internships? Do you know of any resources that can help students with that?
Definitely, I am definitely open to shadowing. And I actually can send you guys, I'm not gonna lie, it's not gonna be my email, it's gonna be my paralegal's email, but she makes sure I respond to things. I will send you guys that information. So if you want, and she's amazing actually with helping me with the whole shadowing thing, because you learn so much in law school, but it's crazy. They actually don't teach you how to be a lawyer. So then you have to still, go through some sort of mentorship from, like a senior associate or a colleague that you meet. So a lot of times I do have my interns shadow her for quite a bit, and then they can shadow me for some of it, so they can see holistically how the whole thing goes. Also, courts are actually open to the public. So if you want to see how does a family law proceeding go, or how does a criminal proceeding go, they are open to the public. Now with COVID, every court is going to have different rules, but a lot of the judges will post their Zoom links, and you can just kind of log on and you can see like, okay, they're not always super duper exciting, but at least you can kind of see it from there. But yeah, so that's always ways. So you can definitely work on that resume and kind of customize your letter if you are going to reach out to law firms, in particular attorneys, to say why you want to work with them. Because I know a lot of times people can see shadowing and interning as like, ooh, that's free work. Like I'm offering these people free work. A lot of times you're not. There's a lot of like oversight that the attorney has to do for you. So it's work for both parties. So you definitely want to let this person know that you're invested in shadowing them or interning for them in particular. Because I have a bad habit. If I get the whole dear insert person letter, sometimes I will overlook it because I've got other stuff going on. So you definitely want to personalize the letters if you are going to reach out to lawyers or law firms about gaining experience.
And if we want to reach out to you, how can we get in contact with you? And as you type that, do you have any last piece of advice, anything you would like to share with our audience today before we wrap up?
My biggest advice would, don't be afraid to be bad at something new. That would be, I was about to say, don't be afraid to fail. That's not true. I would say, don't be afraid to not be good at something new. And and be okay with changing your mind about what you want to do in life. On a grand scale, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but as far as like what type of lawyer, how I wanted to do it, how I wanted my practice to look, has changed a lot over the years. And then don't be afraid to say yes to the thing. Well, yes, say yes to the things that scare you. Like if you know this is in alignment with your goals and your dreams, even if it seems too lofty, say yes. So the reason I actually started my firm and opened up a brick and mortar office was because I was reading Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. So I'd actually joined the challenge. I was like, for the next 30 days, I'm going to say yes to everything that scares me, and the opportunities that came my way that allowed me to elevate myself were insane because I was obligated to say yes to everything. So that's always good.
Well said. Say yes to it. And thank you for the parting words. Attorney Holland has dropped her information to her law firm, as well as how to get in contact with Ms. Diana, the paralegal for Holland Law Firm. If you all would like to make that connection beyond the CLC, please do that. If you do need help with drafting your email, please visit my office. I am happy to do so. And we can begin fostering that relationship and help you on your way with becoming a lawyer or just, advocating for human rights in any capacity. Attorney Holland, thank you so much for taking this time to join us, and welcome to the ATA family. You have been a real treat. Thank you for answering the questions, and to the audience for the wonderful questions that you all asked. This again is going to be recorded and will be made available to you in a few weeks. At the end of this event, you will be receiving the CLC feedback survey. Please complete that. Let us know what you learned from this, what you gained from it, how I did, if this was helpful, what you would like to see in the future, so that we can continue to cater these CLCs to you. With all that being said, you all have a wonderful day. Take good care. Stay safe. Be well. And we hope to see you all soon in person. And Attorney Holland, we will definitely have you in the CLC, the ATA Lounge very soon, as soon as,
Get all everything situated. But thank you guys so much for having me. The questions were great. They were really fun. Thank you.
No problem. You all have a great day, and talk to you all soon.
Bye.